we go. Okay, so we are recording our session now. Thank you so much for joining us today for the Accessible Media Production Graduate Certificate Capstone Showcase 2020. Again, you can follow along with today's presentation using the link to Otter AI Teams. This can be found in the chat area. I will be posting it periodically throughout the session as people start joining. So if you have any trouble, it should be there again. Just a few housekeeping notes. I'm going to ask people that we're a little worried about the bandwidth. So if you could keep your cameras and mics muted unless you're asking a question, and then I will call upon you and you can unmute yourself to ask the question. If you'd like to indicate a question, you can put that in the chat box, or you can use the icons or the reactions to indicate that you'd like to ask a question of the students. And the way we'll set today up is the students will present for about 10 minutes, and then we'll have a few minutes to ask some questions of them. If we're not able to get through all of the questions, then we'll be sure to follow up with you. And please note that this session is being recorded and will be posted on the Accessible Media Production website at mohawkcollege.ca/390. This is our agenda today, just a brief overview and introduction of what a capstone applied research project is. And then our students will each take a turn in presenting. We first have Jeanette Campbell, and then Evelyn Elliott, Allison Fitzgibbon, Patty Hiscock, Shiona McKenzie, and Kayla Maiolo. We will conclude with an overview of how to become an industry partner if you're interested, and then a little bit more information on the Accessible Media Production Program. So, what is a capstone applied research project? A capstone project is a multifaceted assignment that serves as a culminating academic and intellectual experience for the students. The students are introduced to their industry partner in order to conduct applied research. Early in September, each student decides on an industry partner. They have a choice of selecting an industry partner that I pitch to them, using their own industry if they're employed, or together the student and I work and we collaborate to find an industry partner that meets their area of interest or goals. They then work on conducting applied research, and applied research aims at finding a solution for an immediate problem facing an industrial business organization. Applied research is considered to be non-systematic inquiry, and it is usually launched by a company, agency, or an individual in order to address a specific problem. Each student works with their industry partner to identify an accessible media problem within that organization. They then work throughout the first semester to do evidence-based research. It ties into their course of study. And so the students, for example, in their disability legislation class, would research that organization and see what legislation, whether it's global, national, local legislation that applies to that organization. And this takes place in each of the students' courses. The students then in the second semester, once they have identified the problem, they've done their evidence-based research, they propose a draft solution. And they work throughout the second semester to put together a solution to that problem. And so today, you're not going to be able to see the full scope of the solution that the student has put together because they only have a few minutes. These projects are very large and the amount of work they've done is considerable. But you'll see a highlight of the key points of their solution that they have put together for their industry partner. They may also introduce some of their other experiences that they've had in the program, such as an industry placement, or perhaps some of the skills that they acquired in the program. I just wanted to, before I pass it off to the students, I just wanted to have a huge thank you to our industry partners. Our 2019-2020 Capstone Industry Partners include Pearson Publishing, Sheridan College, the Hawk 101.5 FM, A Life Worth Living, Top Hat Publishers, and Mohawk College's Inclusive and Diversity and Accessible Learning Services departments. So without further ado, I'm going to pass this over to our accessible media production students for their capstone showcase. Our first student is Jeanette Campbell.
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us. I just need to open up the presentation. Bear with me just 1 second. So my name is Jeanette Campbell. As I said, thank you for being here today so that we can describe to you some of the things that we have learned in the program, some of the things that we have accomplished. Before I get started, just a very brief, oh, pardon me, it's not letting me click. Oh, there we go. Just a very brief overview of how I got to this program. I graduated with a Bachelor's of Science in Chemistry with a minor in Mathematics. I continued my education in graduate school where I continued to learn more about chemistry. After all of those years of schooling, I decided that I needed a change, so I ended up in industry for about 10 years. And afterwards became an instructor at Mohawk College. And one thing I have noticed over time is that the number of students requiring accommodations or dealing with the various disabilities has really increased. And I wanted to find ways to help my students. And that's what brought me to the Accessible Media Production Program. So that's where I came from. So Jennifer mentioned that we had some industry hour experiences. So I would just like to share a little bit about that with you. I worked with the Royal Ontario Museum, specifically the Department of Volunteer Members. They produce newsletters and brochures that get posted on the websites and get mailed out. Of course, they're mandated to make those documents accessible. And the newsletters and brochures are generally produced in Word and PDF. So my role was to create a one-day workshop and to train them on the production of accessible Word documents that can then be converted into other accessible formats. Now, one thing about accessibility, of course, is that there is a lot of perceptions or myths, misunderstandings about accessibility, such as accessible documents are ugly or boring, they're expensive, difficult, time-consuming, oh, it's just optional, it's not my problem, why should I worry about it? And no one has complained. And of course, we had some members that were hesitant and had some of these impressions in the group. So the one way that I tried to overcome that is by introducing them to a document whose front page you can see on the screen. And I gave them the document in two formats, an accessible Word document and an inaccessible Word document. And I asked them to look at the documents to see, do they see any differences? And it was from here that I then walked them through and indicated to them and showed them what the differences are and what makes one accessible and one inaccessible. I had also prepared for them some accessible Word templates, and these particular templates were just a way to get them started. They included the Royal Ontario Museum branding, such as the font, the colors, the header design on the newsletters. So on the screen is a front page of one of the newsletters. It's Friends of South Asian newsletter. And the layout is kind of based upon some of their previous publications. And the templates, of course, exclude inaccessible features that they were originally using. Things such as text boxes and tables that were used for layout, and the production of, let's say, lists without the use of the proper bullet structure. And so now that brings me to my capstone project. My industry partner was Pearson, and I worked with Pearson on one of their new programs that they've introduced called Mythology. Mythology is an online program. It is designed for teachers to help them to engage and teach their students, as well as to do things like assessments. Now, Pearson had, as I mentioned, just introduced the program, and they wanted to kind of get a baseline of where are they in terms of the accessibility. So my role was to actually do that accessibility assessment. And the hope, of course, is that they will find the results useful, and they will be able to hopefully use it in guiding them towards the development of additional years for this particular program, because originally it started with just kindergarten and grade 1. So one of the things I looked at were some documents, specifically Microsoft Word and PDF documents, because these are documents that are quite common on their site. And a lot of the documents incorporate things like tables. Some had text boxes and some had images. And of course, these can be problematic in terms of accessibility. As an example, here on the slide is a picture of one of their worksheets that are designed so that the teacher can cut it up into 4 pieces and present the individual problems to their students. Now, of course, this layout can be created with the use of a table. And if that table is not structured properly in Word or in PDF, it can lead to accessibility issues. For example, looking at the cell, we would say, okay, I'm going to read the content from the top to the bottom before I continue to the next cell. However, if this is not structured properly, it can occur that, for example, a screen reader may read this from left to right, and then it would be a completely incomprehensible to a user to understand what it's about. At this point, I would like to acknowledge AbleDocs. AbleDocs helped me with some of the work with the PDF documents in exploring the differences between what does it mean to be to pass an Adobe Acrobat accessibility checker versus being PDF UA accessible. I also did a web audit, and the web audit was done to WCAG 2.1 level AA, and it involved things like a manual inspection of the sites, keyboard navigation of the sites, the use of various automated testing tools, as well as the use of a screen reader. On the screen is just one page from the Mythology website. And what it's showing you is what, for example, the keyboard navigation should be like. It should follow a logical order. So from left to right and top to bottom. And so these are some of the things that I had, of course, looked at and examined to see how it behaved. As part of my project, I also prepared an introduction to web accessibility video, where I looked at the importance of accessibility. I highlighted some of the common accessibility issues and looked at the importance of keyboard navigation. The video included things such as inclusive and plain language, captioning, and integrated description. If you're interested in seeing the video, I have prepared a bit.ly link. It's https://bit.ly/W and lowercase EBA, the number 1, and Y. So what are my future plans? I'm planning on continuing to learn more. I'm most interested in document and web accessibility, and actually am looking for a job in the accessibility field because I've enjoyed it so much, and I just think that I can go out and use some of the skills and knowledge I've gained to hopefully make a difference in helping to remove some of the accessibility barriers. If you would like a copy of this presentation or have any other questions for me or comments, please feel free to contact me at campbell.janette, that's JANETTE, @gmail.com. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Jeanette. And I will put the link to Jeanette's presentation in the chat box. Or Jeanette, maybe you could?
Okay. Yep.
Great, thank you. Up next is Evelyn Ferguson Elliott. Evelyn's passion for accessibility advocacy began with advocating for family members who had physical and mental disabilities. Evelyn, we'll pass it over to you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry. Technical difficulty. 1 second.
Sorry, you know what, Evelyn, while you get set up, it just occurred to me that I forgot if anyone had a question for Jeanette. Sorry, that's totally on me. Does anybody have a question for Jeanette or any comment that you would like to provide? I know there's a few in the link, so lots of wonderful presentations. Jeanette's a few opportunities to reach out to some people after the presentation, so you might want to take a look at that. And Jeanette has posted the link to the video in the chat box for you to take a look at. But if anybody has any specific questions for Jeanette, we can take a few minutes right now. Look at that, Jeanette, you just stunned them all into silence. All right. Well, if you think of any at the end, we can always do a round of questions at the end as well.
Sounds great.
Oh, Devin has a question for you. Devin, do you want to unmute yourself and ask?
Hi, Jeanette. Great presentation. In my administration course, I worked on making many of their documents accessible for the volunteer program and application process. In your opinion, do you think they've been making good steps in making their work accessible?
I'm sorry, because of the sound, I was not able to hear which group or who you were asking about.
Devin was working with the office for the Royal Ontario Museum.
Oh, okay, right. We have had some of the members reach out to us for additional support or questions, because as they were working on those documents and trying to get a handle of, how to produce that accessible document, of course they would run into issues, but we have seen that there was a great leap from, what they were producing before towards making something that is a lot more accessible. So I believe it will be an ongoing process for them, but I think that they're kind of, I would say, on their way.
Yeah, and we have two of the members from the Royal Ontario Museum Department of Museum Volunteers here with us today as well. And I think that they would probably agree that there's still a little bit of work to do, but that they have made great strides.
Yeah, totally agree. It's Sharon from the Department of Museum Volunteers. You were so supportive, and it was nice to be able to reach out and have access to expert advice when we started to stumble. But yeah, with the workshop and your support, we've made great leaps forward, and we appreciate it.
Perfect.
Wonderful. Thanks so much for that, Sharon. Jeanette, thank you. I apologize that I didn't come for questions right away. You thought you got off, didn't you? And that gave Evelyn hopefully some time to get set up. And again, that's my mistake. So if you have any questions for Evelyn as she goes through her project, feel free to put them in the chat box or hold on to them and I'll ask you once she is done. So over to Evelyn.
Hi. Sorry about the delay there. I hope everyone can see the screen now and hear me okay. My name's Evelyn Ferguson Elliott, and my presentation today is accessibility at Mohawk College and similar sized educational institutions. This was a multi-year plan review with recommendations. My industry partner, of course, was Mohawk College's Equity and Social Inclusion. And I'd like to thank Maxine Carter, Director and Special Advisor, for this wonderful opportunity. Thank you very much. Originally, I started the project, I had to come up with a problem statement, but Mohawk College was already so committed to improving access, both physical and attitudinal, to facilities, programs, information resources, goods and services, employment. So I had to do some thinking and some research, and I decided I would set about finding out if there was anything that we could learn from other post-secondary institutions and their accessibility practices. So the problem statement that ended up coming about was, can Mohawk College improve delivery of exceptional and innovative accessibility services? And of course, the project began with the legislation. So under the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act, we have general requirements as well as the 5 standards. And the 5 standards are customer service, information and communication, employment, transportation, and the design of public spaces. So my research, the scope of legislation that I used was done through the lens of customer service standards and the information and communication standards, as well as the general requirements. I compared Mohawk's multi-year accessibility plan to the plans of 3 colleges and 3 universities of similar size: Sheridan College, Algonquin College, George Brown College, McMaster University, Brock University, and Wilfrid Laurier University. I also conducted web testing research, and I facilitated end-user testing of Mohawk's accessibility page. It involved about a dozen people with disabilities using their own assistive devices. They were given instructions to find something specific on the accessibility webpage. I later conducted a web audit of the accessibility webpage using automated and manual testing, and it was a WCAG 2.1 level AA audit. My findings, what the other plans show. Surprisingly, only one of the multi-year plan documents was actually an accessible document. That was Mohawk's. Overall, it appeared that on paper at least, all the institutions, including Mohawk, are meeting their commitments to the AODA standards. All institutions, including Mohawk, employ accessibility innovations. I was able to create a list from the other institutions and from an Ontario Government Committee review. Innovations such as hiring an American Sign Language position, introducing apps to support mental health, adopting kiosk design standards from Brock University, and hiring an organizational accessibility coordinator. My findings from the web testing. The web audit showed me that from a web developer coding point of view, the accessibility webpage was very accessible. However, many of the people in the end user testing group had difficulty finding accessibility information easily. It turned out that the issue was a lack of plain language. I realized that the one thing that had been an issue through all my research of the legislation and the multi-year plans of all the institutions was that none of this information was easy to find, easy to understand, or easy to use, the 3 tenets of plain language. The legislation starts everyone off on a bad foot because it is not user-friendly. So we end up with multi-year accessibility plans that are not user-friendly. There are probably very few or a handful of students, employees, or visitors who actually regularly look at the multi-year plans. So there's a communication divide between the legislation and the people whose rights it is supposed to protect. So what do? The solution is to create a plain language accessibility webpage. In order to enhance Mohawk's accessibility, my recommendation was to be the first to bridge this divide, be innovative. Make it easy for users to see exactly how Mohawk is demonstrating their commitments to the AODA legislation found in the multi-year plan. The best way to do this is to enhance Mohawk's website in several ways. Part of that is to offer a plain language version of the multi-year plan. No other institution of the ones that I researched has done this. I wrote a plain language version of the multi-year plan based on the sections of the AODA that I studied. This could be posted on the accessibility webpage to really allow understanding of what Mohawk is already committed to. There could be clickable links that would take users directly to plain language information about how exactly Mohawk is fulfilling each commitment. The next part of the solution is to follow plain language guidelines by customizing information to the user. Gather all the accessibility links from different sections of the website and centralize them on the accessibility page by creating user channels for students, employees, and visitors. Within these channels, the links would be clearly related to the different sections of the multi-year plan. This way, you can allow users to find all the links that pertain to them in one central location. Of course, some of the links would be duplicated across the channels, such as accessible documentation or service animal information, for example. The biggest impact this course had on me is empathy. In every lesson, every assignment, every workshop, we were learning about empathy for those with disabilities. There can be no culture of inclusion without empathy. All these facets of accessible media production that we learned about were fascinating, galvanizing, and have fueled my drive to become an accessibility evangelist working in the field. The expertise that I gained in doing this year-long capstone project was the knowledge and confidence to know that as an accessible media production graduate, I can help organizations identify, research, plan, and implement their accessibility goals. My next steps for learning are very soon I'll be taking some coding courses. I plan to join some accessibility committees to put my knowledge to use immediately. And in July, I'll be completing my certification for Certified Professional in Accessibility Core Competencies with the International Association of Accessibility Professionals. I'm actively looking for approximately 40 hours of industry experience in the areas of web auditing, accessible document creation for Word and PDF, as well as some experience in captioning and described video. I'm also actively seeking employment in the accessibility field. I found the Capstone project was very rewarding, so I could see myself fulfilling a similar role as an accessibility consultant working on projects involving research and recommendations. I would also be happy finding employment in accessible documentation, digital media, or web accessibility. I want to thank you for joining me today. It's been a pleasure sharing my Capstone project with you. My contact email is evelyn@makemediaaccessible.com. That's EVELYN@ACCESSIBLEMEDIA.com. My LinkedIn profile can be found under Evelyn Ferguson Elliott, and my Twitter is Accessibility Watch. If you'd like a copy of this presentation, please access the QR code with your camera now. And if you'd like the presentation in an alternate format, please email me at the above address. Have a great afternoon, and thank you.
Thank you, Evelyn. Well done. Is there any questions, or does anyone have any comments that they would like to provide for Evelyn at this time while Allison is getting set up for her presentation? So a nice comment from Maxine Carter, who is Evelyn's industry partner, thanking her for all of her hard work, and what a pleasure it was working with her. So nice job, Evelyn. All right, if you have any questions, Evelyn is happy to, oh, there we go. I love how Bert has that. Bert, do you want to ask your question, or do you want me to read it?
If you can hear me.
Yes, go ahead.
Perfect. Yeah, no, I was just thrilled that the research really bore out the need to include persons with disabilities in the review and testing of websites. There's certainly a lot of push by the industry to rely on automated tools, and you really demonstrated how there's a lot of things they miss. If you don't include humans in the testing, especially humans with disabilities, you're going to miss a lot of stuff. And you know, I've learned that the hard way, and I'm glad you've shown that as well. So thank you.
Evelyn, you're on mute.
Works and sometimes it doesn't. Thank you so much. I think that was one of the most enjoyable parts actually of the project was, you know, the interaction with the people with disabilities and how they actually could give us feedback that was so valuable. So thank you to them. I know some of you are here today, so thank you for all participating in that.
Evelyn, Andrea asked, what was the best takeaway from your industry experience?
The industry experience or the Capstone project experience?
I think either.
I would say the best takeaway from it was just that realization that there's work that you have to do to get to the bottom of what's going on, but it's really enjoyable when it all comes together. And I really enjoy research, and it's kind of like a bit of being a detective, you know, putting all the pieces of the puzzle together and coming up with a solution. I think that's really enjoyable. I really thought that was fun.
Nice, thank you. I'm going to give the mic over to Maxine. I think she wanted to make a comment.
Yes, thanks. Hi, everyone. Just to comment to Evelyn, to say that, unless this may be a quirky thing about me, but I really enjoyed actually reading the report. It was so interesting to follow the way that you did that. It was easy to read, and I got so much like joy out of reading it, because I'm like, yes, I get it. Totally. You know, so you were on point with many things in that report, and I totally appreciated the amount of work you put in. in doing that research and looking at all those institutions and what they were doing, and how we can do better. So thank you very much for that.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for the opportunity, Maxine.
And that wasn't a little report, Maxine, so you had your work cut out for you there.
True. Well, yeah, that took a while, but I enjoyed it. I didn't put it down. I did it all in one go and then went back again.
Good for you. Well, thank you, Evelyn. Nice job. I'm now going to pass it over to Allison Fitzgibbon.
Thank you, Jen. So I'm just going to share my screen. And can you now see my infographic? Okay. So hi everyone, I'm Allison, and I teach in and coordinate the Educational Support Program in the School of Education at Sheridan College. Disability awareness and accessibility are really important to us in our program, but I noticed that we weren't always teaching with fully inclusive practices. When faculty are hired, we are taught about the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act, and we're introduced to the basic principles of universal design for learning, but we're not really taught a practical way to take these ideas together and use them in a way that benefits students. So I wanted to explore this for my capstone project and find ways to include more accessibility into our course design. Our 5-year program review was last year, and it revealed that students want more flexibility with their course delivery. So they really just want more online courses. So my project is therefore called Inclusive Design in an Online Learning Environment. At Sheridan, we use D2L as our learning management system, and all of our course content, our course materials, resides in that LMS. So I've prepared an infographic to present my project, and it gives an overview of the key points of my research and will lead us to my final accessible product. The infographic begins with an illustration of 3 students, each using technology and assistive devices, and it's followed by short text that focuses on the key points. So I began my capstone project with the problem statement: how might we encourage faculty to adopt inclusive teaching practices? And I began with a review of literature to identify barriers. I explored why faculty seem to be resistant or hesitant to use inclusive curriculum design. And I also identified what barriers exist for specific student cohorts. And that led to a list of what students need from faculty in an online course. I created a template of a course based on inclusive design practices, and then embedded learning tools and opportunities for faculty training within that template. Several barriers do exist in the creation of accessible educational materials. Faculty misconceptions about accessibility, a lack of training on how to create accessible content, and a lack of immediate usable resources prevent faculty from fully embracing inclusive educational practices. So I use data gathered from my earlier research and anecdotal evidence from being a professor for over 10 years, and I outlined what students need from faculty. This includes consistency, clarity, and accessible lessons. Consistency refers to having a consistent layout in their online courses and consistent teaching practices. In terms of clarity, students need to know the expectations in an online course. So what is the learning outcome of each module? What is the intention of every activity? And what are the expectations for each assignment? They also need to trust the technology they're being asked to use. So they need to know where a link will take them, and they need to trust that the link will work and it won't be broken. They need to trust that when they click to download a document, it will download and not take them to a broken page or a missing file. And they also need the opportunity to have many different ways of taking in information. So multiple means of representation with their course materials. And this can be achieved if we record short video lessons supported with closed captions, if we provide a PowerPoint that students can download and a transcript for those videos that they can download to then use as their study materials. But equally important in an online course is a moment to pause and reflect on their learning, and also opportunities to apply their learning. When we provide accessible content or conversion-ready documents, fewer students will need to request formal accommodations, and it's just a more inviting approach for all students. When I examined the needs of faculty, I determined that faculty could benefit from a template to use as a starting point in the design of their own courses. The template could provide them with the structure they need to feel confident that they're going to meet the diverse needs of their students. So what did I make? You're about to see it, but it led to the development of a template and training module that focuses on the intersection of web content accessibility guidelines, universal design for learning, and differentiated instruction. So really respecting student readiness and student voice. The final step of my project was to offer training to faculty who are interested in learning about best practices for online teaching. So along with my colleagues, we offered a series of online live webinars to review best practices, and those were also recorded and shared for those faculty who weren't able to join at that time. So let's take a look now at the course module. Jennifer, can you confirm that you can see my screen? Okay, thank you. So we're now on the main page of my course in the LMS. And on the left side, there is a table of contents with 19 modules. And you can think of the modules as like sections in a binder. So every module or section contains the weekly learning materials for that course. So this course was designed with accessibility in mind. And the idea is that faculty could import this course template into their own workbench to structure their own course. The course is also designed to model universal design for learning. I've created a series of templates, of like HTML page templates for faculty so that they can personalize the course based on their color preferences, and all of the colors have been checked for color contrast. And I've also modeled universal design for learning in the creation of assignments by demonstrating how you can create a narrative format of an assignment description, so stating the purpose, process, and product of an assignment, a checklist description, which is a highly scaffolded checklist to break down the process for students who need that level of support, and then a video description of the assignment to talk about that checklist and demonstrate for students how to complete the assignment. I've also embedded H5P activities into this template to further model universal design for learning, in this case, modeling multiple means of engagement. Assignment protocols are pretty boring to read, but it's really important information. So I broke down the program's assignment protocols into questions from the student perspective. So what happens if I hand in an assignment late? What do I do if I need an extension on an assignment due date? Those questions are presented here in text blocks, and then students can click on the hotspot to reveal the answer. I also invited end users to navigate my template and test for accessibility using JAWS, Mac VoiceOver, and NVDA. What excites me most about this template is that I included a module to teach faculty about accessibility, And it begins with an infographic to point to important accessibility legislation in terms of digital information and communication and post-secondary education. And I tied that in to Sheridan's strategic plan, focusing on inclusion and equity. There are other files in this module that teach faculty how to apply UDL to the design of their content, the design of their assignments, and the delivery of their course. One particular page also focuses on the intersection of UDL, DI, and WCAG. And I think it works really well to help explain these fantastic teaching approaches in a way that's very harmonious. So moving forward, I hope to continue to be an advocate for accessibility in post-secondary education. In the fall, we're looking at engaging in scholarly research to investigate the student experience of online learning when faculty adopt this teaching approach. And we'll see what the students have to share about that. If you do want to get in touch with me about the project, you can reach me at allison.fitzgibbon1@sheridancollege.ca, and that is ALLISON.FITZGIBBON@SHERIDANCOLLEGE.ca. And I would just like to say thank you to my Dean, Dr. Michael O'Leary, and my Associate Dean, Dr. Kathy Coulthard, for their support throughout this project. Jen, if there's any time left, I'm happy to answer questions.
So there's lots of comments going on in the chat. I was wondering if we just wanted to, if anybody had a question that they wanted, or Kathy, did you want to just take a moment to read your comment?
I can read my comment. It's not something that Allison doesn't already know, but essentially what I was saying is that it's not only welcomed work for our team and for our college, but I am privy to being able to see how collaborative the college is in accepting of this work because of Allison's approach to sharing this with us. And I joke with Allison all the time that I worry every time she presents something because I think somebody's going to steal it from me and I don't want them to. So yeah, I'm incredibly proud to even know that I've been able to reflect on my own work and change my practices because of working with Allison.
Thank you, Kathy.
I was privy to her class template a little bit earlier, and 7 minutes isn't enough time to see everything that it offers.
It's not, I would agree. Allison, there's lots of great comments here. One of them I'm just going to read here. Is it feasible? How feasible is it to integrate this approach to an instructor's performance review? Could this training be made a requirement? Could accessibility be required, or at least a certain percentage of modules?
Yeah, so that's tricky to answer. I think that we don't want to force accessibility on anyone because then it can encourage that resistance. So it's really about teaching from an invitational stance. And I find that once I've shared resources with faculty, I've been sharing since the beginning of May, they're so excited that accessibility can be easy. So yeah, I don't know how it could be infused into performance reviews. I don't know if associate deans would want it to be, but I think it's important that certainly when new faculty are hired, that we begin from the stance of being invitational, inclusive educators who practice accessibility from the beginning. And that's the intention of this course template, is from the very beginning of course development, you can adopt this template and it guides you through the process of making your course more accessible. Even if you just do one thing each term, eventually you'll get to a place where you're offering far more accessible materials than you were in the past.
And then maybe I'll just take one more. Sam, do you want to ask your question?
Allison, this is Sam from, I don't know how to put who I am, but I'm potentially going to teach a course at U of T. So would you be ready to do a webinar for a bunch of us, or in any other way? Do you propose to share your resources? Because this is absolutely fantastic.
Oh, thank you, Sam. Yeah, I'm really excited to share them. I want to share them. That's the whole purpose of it. So I want people to be able to use this template to create courses that are inclusive for all learners. So I'm happy to work with you on that.
So probably I would look at a joint webinar or something like that. I'll get back to you on that.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Allison, for your time. And there are a lot more comments and questions, and maybe you can take a look at that and provide them with your email address again in the chat box if they want to reach out to you.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you. So we're going to pass it over now to Patricia Hiscock. Patty?
Hi, thanks, Jennifer. So let me just share my screen here and find my presentation for everyone. Okay. Can you see my presentation? Is it showing up there? Yes, no? Yes, excellent, thank you. So hi everyone, thanks for joining us. My name is Patricia Hiscock. Everybody calls me Patty, so feel free. I'm gonna start off, I did a bit of an agenda because I wanted you to be aware of what you're getting into here. And I'm getting a notice that my internet is unstable, so I apologize if you lose me. Jennifer, you can give me the sign if you've lost me. I want to introduce you a little bit about me, my industry partner, my project, what's next for me, and some final thoughts and contact information for everyone. So about me, I call this adventure that I've been on for the last 9 months, my journey of 0 to 100 kilometers per hour in less than 60 seconds, or basically how I really decided to go back to college just to keep my brain limber. I'm a retired technical writer. I stopped working full-time, full tilt in high tech at the end of September 2017. And about 1.5 years into my retirement, I was getting a little concerned that I was getting physically lazy and that my brain was really getting lazy. So I thought maybe going back to college would be a good idea. So from that start to today, where I have, with everything that I've learned and participated in, the people I've met, the Capstone project exercise, I have developed such a passion for disability inclusion and accessibility. I want to get involved in advocacy. So that's me in a nutshell. Okay. So we'll press on here. Just some thoughts about the program itself. I realized early on when I attended that first information session hosted by Jennifer way back in over 1 year ago now. Then she invited me to attend the Capstone Project Showcase for the class of last year. It was an amazing experience, so worth the time. I met students, grads, program faculty. Each thing I attended, everybody I talked to, it was confirmation that this was absolutely the right choice for me. So I started the program in September, coming to it with a little bit of experience in accessibility. As a technical writer, we were required to make sure that our web-based content was accessible to Web Content Accessibility Guidelines version 2.0 AA level. So I was familiar with testing tools and all of that, but I had no idea the scope and breadth of the program and how incredible the material was going to be, the range of instructors that we got the pleasure to work with. It was amazing. And reflecting now, just being able to apply everything that I've learned during the course of those 9 months from each of the projects, each of the courses, and working with my industry partner on my project, pulling it all together, it just made everything that I've learned over the last couple of semesters so relevant to this new and exciting field that I'm entering. Let me know if I'm talking too fast, okay, Jen? So I want to tell you about my industry partner. They're a Life Worth Living. They're a charitable organization based in Windsor, Ontario, and led by the very passionate and energetic Judy Robinette. She's their executive director, and the purpose of the website is to promote disability inclusion. And actually the words on the main page of the website describe it best. So I'm just going to read those words to you. On their website, they say, choose a life worth living. Everyone needs a chance to join with others in everyday activities. Many ask, but how can someone participate if they have a disability? To answer their question, A Life Worth Living shares stories about how people choose to live a life worth living. So to do that, they provide resources to their audience, people with disabilities and their families, their friends, the businesses and the organizations they work for, and other groups in their communities. And it's really a place to share and to learn and to hear about firsthand experiences, share life strategies, etc. It's an interesting website, and I do have a screenshot in here. Oops, sorry. I will show you a screenshot in a moment. So all those online resources, they include blog articles, stories in the forms of videos. They have great animations. My favorite is Bebot. He's a visually impaired robot, and the video shows you some situations that he encounters as he's moving through life with his white cane. It's very informative and entertaining as well. A Life Worth Living is also working on a business accessibility toolkit currently in production, and the idea is to provide resources and information to medium and small businesses who want to meet the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act requirement for training of their employees, volunteers, and board members. So they have great plans for providing all kinds of resources in that area, and there is a page on the website that you can check out at your leisure. So this next slide is a screenshot of the main page of the website. I was hoping to be able to show you the actual website, but because my internet access is kind of wonky, I didn't want to risk losing everybody. So it's a very attractive website with the common navigation. They feature in the top section of the page the information about their annual bowling fundraiser with a link to register. And then the paragraph about their purpose is featured right at the bottom of the screenshot, and that's the text that I read off to you about choosing a life worth living. Okay, moving on. So let me tell you about the project itself. So in meeting, when I first met with Judy and we talked about the organization and the information that they share, the stories, we decided we needed to clarify what the goals are for our collaboration. And it's really about ensuring that the online resource center, the website and the tools and the infrastructure is all fully compliant. It's completely engaging and inclusive and usable by everybody. And we also wanted to make sure that every resource that they make available via the resource center is user-friendly, easy to navigate and usable, fully accessible, regardless of the format, okay? And they do provide several different formats with plans to add others as we go along. So when I started my research, I needed to focus my questions and the information that I wanted to gather. So I came up with a list of 5 key questions that I wanted to answer during my initial research. This is during the first semester when we're trying to determine what the problem is. So I needed to look at the legislation that applies to a life worth living. I needed to look at the audience who's using the website and the resources that they are making available. How can we determine if the website is accessible and usable? I needed to think about what actually makes the website accessible. So that's understanding the guidelines and the techniques behind it. And then how can we ensure compliance with each update that A Life Worth Living is planning to make in the future? So I focused my research to answer those questions. I didn't want to go off on tangents and get lost in the weeds. So with respect to legislation and A Life Worth Living, because they are an organization based in Ontario, they do need to adhere to the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act, specifically the Information and Communications Standard. So they are working to achieve the required compliance level of WCAG 2.0 level AA by January 1st, 2021, which is the posted deadline by the ODA. Okay, so they, right now there's no plans to reach out to other provinces or the US or globally, although with the nature of the information, it might be possible that we'll have to look at things like Section 508, provincial guidelines down the road. Right now, we just focused on AODA. I was lucky. They had an initial web accessibility audit performed last year by a third-party organization. The website and content was evaluated against and level AA. Since then, they have made updates to correct issues that were identified during that audit, and they're making progress as we move along. So I had that piece of really important information to start with when I was doing my research for A Life Worth Living. The other key piece of research we had a great opportunity to participate in was the end user testing day in December. Judy and David Best, one of her advisors, were able to join me. It was wonderful to meet them face to face, and the three of us were able to work with our great participants. Of the 8 users that joined the testing day, we had the opportunity to work with 5 of them. We laid out a couple of key tasks that we thought we'd like them to perform and asked them to tell us how they felt about completing the task in the website and exploring the website. So we asked them to take a look at the Life Worth Living Facebook page if they could find it and navigate through the content. We asked them to go to the Life Worth Living website and look for the Bebot robot video. And we also asked them if they could complete one of the forms on the website. Most of the focus was on looking for the video and exploring the resource library in the website. We got some great feedback from all 5 of the participants. On the right-hand side of the screen, you can see a photo of Judy watching on as Jason, one of our testers, is using VoiceOver on his Mac to read one of the web pages that he found. So the users did find some minor issues, but in general, they all felt that the website was really easy to use. I compiled a detailed report. My internet is showing as being unstable. I apologize. I compiled a detailed report and sent it to Judy and A Life Worth Living for them to use to make further updates to the content. So that was a great day. I really love that. So looking at everything that we've learned from examining the website, talking with Judy and the organization, their plans, the end user testing results, and thinking about their goals, it occurred to me that for A Life Worth Living, it's really a question of quality assurance. They have a website that's essentially accessible with some small issues that they've been working on. So the question is, well, how do they maintain the quality and the compliance of the website, including all the content and the navigation? You know, it's critical. How do they ensure that the resources that they're continuing to develop and want to add or update as they go along continue to be accessible and usable to their clients and members? So like I said, it's about quality assurance, which is a topic that's near and dear to my heart as a retired technical writer. The first thing I needed to understand before I could come up with a possible solution was the Life Worth Living development process. So how could we look at the development process and see how we can incorporate quality assurance. So I needed to understand how they manage updates. We looked at the planned updates that they are considering, from adding more videos, new blog postings. They're talking about a podcast series. They're also offering webinars and workshops. The key point for Judy and her team is that as a charitable organization, they can't have a full-blown all-inclusive development plan. They're on a limited budget, so they have to pick and choose projects and make updates as funds are available. So it had to be a more manageable, smaller scope kind of a process for them. Then I went looking for ideas about how you can incorporate quality assurance into your development process. What can I provide as a solution to a life worth living that will really help them? So in considering the possible solution, I thought about my experience as a technical writer and how we did incorporate quality assurance testing in each of our content development processes, including accessibility testing. I posed questions to several contacts and instructors and got some really great suggestions. I read through the World Wide Web Consortium website, the W3C website. They have an excellent section about planning and managing information and planning and managing for accessibility. That was a great resource, and I'm going to continue to refer to that as I move forward in my research. And I looked for information from other well-established organizations who talk a lot about quality assurance and integrating accessibility. Hassel Inclusion, DQ, Jonathan Hassel wrote a book that talks about inclusion in an organization, how you can capture that 20% by making your applications, your mobile apps, and your websites accessible. DQ talks about agile accessibility. I love that term. I'm an agile person. And they actually had an intro to agile accessibility webinar 2 weeks ago. That was a great introduction to the idea. So that's turning into my passion in the accessibility area, is how to ensure that quality assurance as you move forward with your development plans.
Yeah, I think that's probably going to be part of your path to employment.
I think so.
I'm going to
tell I love this stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to get you to wrap it up now. Okay, Patty?
Okay, thank you. So the solution that I made for Life Worth Living was I put together a toolkit. I talked about how they can incorporate accessibility into each of the stages of the development process and provided samples where in each of the stages, planning the video, developing the video, and delivering it, they can ensure that it's compliant. I created a style guide for Life Worth Living that talks about the branding, word usage, using plain and inclusive language in their content, grammar, punctuation, etc., everything that we'll need so that they can be consistent across all of their work because they use third-party developers to create the content. I provided a social media accessible content production guide, how to post accessible social media postings, and an introductory guide to the web content accessibility guidelines. So they have an idea and understanding of what they're looking for and what they need to comply with. Okay, so for me, what's next? Well, of course, I'm looking for new and challenging opportunities. For the industry experience work, I want to get a lot more practice. So I'm going to be continuing to work with a Life Worth Living, thank you, Judy, to complete a web accessibility audit. And I have identified 3 other opportunities that I plan to start soon. And the next big thing for me is my presentation proposal about accessibility and quality assurance was accepted for the 2020 conference, which was unfortunately canceled. So I say hoping, but Jennifer assures me that I will be presenting at the Guelph Accessibility Conference in 2021. So that's nerve-wracking and exciting at the same time. A quick note about the icon, the image that I use in the top corner of the slides, it is the logo for Life Worth Living, and there is alt text associated with the logo on the website. And my slides are just presentation. They're a decorative image. So final thoughts, I just wanted to give a huge thank you to everybody who helped me. To Jennifer, your support, encouragement, and unwavering confidence and friendship. I'm sure I would not have been able to finish this without that. You're amazing, and I love you dearly. To my instructors, you made me work and think so hard. Sometimes I sure my brain was hurting, but it was so worth it. And to my classmates, you're my family. We got to have a reunion soon because I miss you terribly. So if you're interested in a copy of my material, or you just want to talk or have some questions for me, you can contact me. My email address is pattyhiscock@gmail.com. That's PATTIHISCOCK@gmail.com. And you can also find me on LinkedIn. Just search for Patty Hiscock. Thank you very much. Sorry I went long, Jen.
Patty, you did a great job. I know there's a few technical challenges there.
Yeah.
If anyone has any questions for Patty, I'm going to encourage you to put them in the chat box, but just to be mindful of time. And we have 2 more presentations to do, so we're going to move on. So thank you so much. I think that Patty's enthusiasm comes through very clearly, even though the sound may not have always been consistent. So I'm going to pass it over now to Shiona McKenzie. Shiona, did you want to do a bit of an introduction? And then I can play your video.
Will do. Hi, I'm Shiona McKenzie, and I'm currently employed in the music department at Mohawk College. I graduated with a BA from the University of Toronto and pursued a career in communications. I got a postgraduate certificate in strategic PR management and crisis communications, as well as experience teaching English as a foreign language, textbook editing, copywriting, and newspaper journalism. Accessible media production is a natural extension of my skill set. I'm really excited about multimedia and digital communications in the service of people, education, the arts, and nonprofit organizations. So welcome everybody, and with no further ado, because of technical difficulties, I'm asking for Jennifer to help launch my presentation. Thank you. I've been taking a close look at the accessibility needs of my industry partner, 101.5 The Hawk, a student-led radio station at Mohawk College. Programming created by the college's radio, broadcasting, and journalism students mixes with that from community members. Let me tell you about some of the problems and solutions that I've been working on, assessing selected pages of the radio station's website to understand where they did or did not comply, using WebAIM.org's online web accessibility evaluation tool, among others. I examined things that help people using screen readers or keyboard only
to navigate websites. Then I wrote a plain language overview of successes and failures related to the relevant WCAG guidelines.
Hello, my name is Brian Webb. I'm the technologist, de facto station manager at the Hawk 101.5 FM. I've been working with Shiona on several resources for the Hawk. One of the main ones was the Hawk website. Shiona was able to go through with a group and analyze what limitations there are there in terms of accessibility and give us a very comprehensive report about changes that could be made to make the site more accessible. So we've been putting that to work as we develop an entirely new site that is far more responsive and works with screen readers much better. It's very close to being ready to launch, and the guidelines that came out of Shiona's work were instrumental in the shape that the site is taking.
In recent times, the need for diversity and inclusion training in media has increased. At the same time, the popularity of podcasting as a source of information and entertainment has risen, yet the accessibility of podcasting has lagged. As a common practice, media players have not offered labeled radio buttons or color schemes that accommodate people with reading and vision-related disabilities. Most podcast content creators haven't considered the 1 in 5 people who have a disability. So transcripts, captions, and audio descriptions and alternative ways to save and play podcasts have not usually been provided.
Shiona is also part of the Above and Beyond podcast. We've been discussing airing Above and Beyond as a show on the Hawk.
To spotlight creative local people who happen to have disabilities, Anthony Frizina, a recognized Hamilton-based accessibility advocate, teamed up with me to collaborate on the concept and development of this project.
Hi, my name is Anthony Frizina, founder of Above and Beyond, and soon to be co-host of Above and Beyond the podcast with Shiona McKenzie. It's important to celebrate, innovate, educate, motivate, and empower. Persons with disabilities are first and foremost people, often overlooked and overshadowed. We want to bring to the forefront the importance of educating our community on inclusion and accessibility from the standpoint of actually listening, but more important, hearing us and making decisions with us in mind and at the table.
The reason I believe that programming is vital and important to bring to the Hawk airwaves is particularly as a campus and community station, we need to be actively addressing barriers to accessing media making in general.
The door is wide open now for Mohawk College and the Hawk to offer accessible podcast training workshops. Brian, Anthony, and I strongly believe in helping people who are underrepresented in media find ways to share their perspectives. We developed a great lineup of guests, starting with Maxine Carter, Director and Special Advisor, Equity and Social Inclusion at Mohawk College. Unfortunately, COVID-19 prevented our first scheduled recording session, but we're preparing to use digital technology to meet the challenge of physical distancing. Let me tell you about the style guide. Mohawk College has an existing style guide for campus-wide brand consistency, but I drafted a supplement specifically to encourage and empower the Hawk's volunteer radio show hosts and content producers to provide accessible and inclusive content for listeners. This supplement included guidance towards gender-neutral terminology, disability-inclusive language, a list of useful resources, and more.
Shiona developed for us a style guide that we can share with programmers and staff and faculty of the radio program here at Mohawk as well to further their ability to speak with cultural sensitivity and considerations for all listeners. This is something that I think all media outlets could benefit from. The radio program here at Mohawk College hasn't had anything like that in place. This is something I'm very excited to be able to offer to students, faculty, community, volunteers at the Hawk that will be an essential part of the learning experience at our station.
A highlight for me is the opportunity to collaborate with community members like Dave, who spoke frankly about disability disclosure in his workplace. I was granted the opportunity to volunteer with the Canadian National Institute for the Blind, CNIB, collaborating with the CNIB's Ontario West Phone It Forward campaign specialist, Clover Akwoko Dabanka, who is in fact a young artist and OCAD University graduate who happens to have vision loss. What's next? End-user testing, hands-on trials with assistive technology, and persona development are proven methods to accelerate understanding and improvement when it comes to accessible media production. Skills such as captioning and described video, and products like accessible PDFs and PowerPoint presentations are the keys to a more accessible future. I aim to be active in a community that brings greater accessibility and inclusion to life.
If you would like to reach out to me, I can be contacted by email, SHIONAM, that's Shiona M, @gmail.com. And here's an update. Please check out the new Hawk website. It is 1015thehawk.mohawkcollege.ca, which just launched on Monday.
Thank you, Shiona. That was excellent. Considering that you didn't have access to any of the programs or technology that you were introduced to in order to create this video, you managed to figure out how to do it at home. So well done. There's quite a few comments here throughout the chat, but does anybody have, we have a couple of minutes if anybody has a question for Shiona at this time or a comment. And Ellen, yes, we will be sharing the style guides with Mohawk's marketing department for sure. Okay, well, we could use a little bit more time as I think we went over on a few. So thank you so much, Shiona. If you could post your email address in the chat box, so if somebody has any questions, they can reach out to you.
Doing it right now.
Well done. Thank you so much. Up next, we have, I think, our final presenter is Kayla Maiolo. Kayla, we'll pass it over to you.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today. So I'm just going to set up my slideshow here. Jen, if you can just confirm that that's showing up.
Not yet. It's not, Kayla.
Just
there you go.
okay, perfect. So my name is Kayla Maiolo, and my project is accessible online learning for post-secondary students. In my project, I partnered with Top Hat, which is an education technology company based in Toronto. And Top Hat creates learning resources, including an interactive learning app with digital textbooks, quizzes, and recordings for post-secondary students. So there's a growing need right now, especially for immersive and online learning experience at a post-secondary level and all levels. So Top Hat's goal was to create accessible digital textbooks for post-secondary students. As an educational assistant working with students with disabilities, I was really interested in supporting them in this goal. So from my position as an EA, I wanted to incorporate a focus on accessibility for students with disabilities, my passion for technology as an interactive, engaging, and effective tool for learning, and an interest in learning more about resources at a post-secondary level and the accessibility considerations that come with this. Web accessibility benefits students with disabilities. So for example, confusing website layouts affects students with intellectual disabilities, and students with hearing and vision disabilities often miss out on necessary information in videos and other media when they aren't accessible. And web accessibility also benefits all students. So here are a few examples. Captions benefit all students in understanding and just an overall better experience. And app accessibility of digital textbooks and other resources benefit all students. So a lot of students prefer to use an app version, and it's essential that the app version on a phone and tablet are accessible too. So project overview. My project is a collection of modules and quick reference guides that are focused on testing and creating accessible post-secondary digital learning materials. Modules include narration and captioning. So I was able to apply the skills I've learned in the program to present information in a clear and accessible way. I'm going to quickly go over the topics that my project covers. So first, the digital textbook audit. I did an audit of 2 modules, a module audit from Effective Public Speaking by George Griffin and Principles of Economics by Stephen Buckles. So some criteria, I used the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines 2.0 Level A criteria for this audit. And some criteria was relevant to both modules, but there's also unique concerns depending on subject matter. So for example, the economics module included complicated graphs and charts. And this information also has to be provided to a person who is blind or partially sighted. So Top Hat has been working hard on making sure that they have text descriptions as well that provide all of this information. And I've been able to work together with them on this and provide a few ideas of how to go about this in an accessible way. End user testing. So a few months ago, Top Hat was able to join in end user testing at the college, and it was just a really insightful experience. The individuals were able to test out the digital textbooks, and we learned a lot from this experience. So I wanted to include more on my project, specifically about the value of learning from people in the disability community and accessibility testing, and a guide on setup considerations for end user testing, recruitment options, and important accessibility questions to ask during the testing. And persona testing. So in the program, we also were able to do an event on persona testing, which was really valuable experience. So personas are using fictional user profiles of individuals with disabilities for accessibility testing, with a focus on assistive technology compatibility. And I wanted to share just the value of thinking about personal experiences. And this is a great way to understand accessibility as more than a checklist when we're thinking about people's everyday experiences. I just wanted to share a few examples. I thought this thread on Twitter illustrated this very well. So one person's posting, "I'm curious to know, if you have a disability, what's the hardest thing about browsing the web?" And this reply says, "Nearly blind in my left eye, tiny thin font with low contrast to the background." And another reply, "I'd also just like to point out that captions are amazing and great for more than the deaf and hard of hearing community. More videos need captions." This person also said, "I'm autistic, and when I get overloaded, it's harder to process auditory input, especially if the person talking is off screen or something." So I just thought this was a great example of illustrating that. I also included in my project information on inclusive and accessible language. So plain language, how to speak in a clear and direct way, and understanding your audience. So at the post-secondary level, sometimes it's okay to use big words, and that's not what plain language is all about, but it's just important to be mindful of the context and your audience. And inclusive language, so language that is free from prejudice and discrimination, and being mindful of how we write and communicate. I also included Web Content Accessibility Guidelines 2.1 in plain language, which is helpful for people without a technical background, and it's also just a great quick reference. And the Accessible Content Production Guide that I created, which is focused on creating accessible content, including alternative text, captions, and described video, and also accessible content on social media. And I included a reference list of accessibility resources too. So what's next for me? As an educational assistant, I'm always interested in school board professional development, specifically with supporting students with disabilities and assistive technology. And I'm interested in learning more about the technical side of accessibility, like web accessibility and HTML, and finishing up my Bachelor's of Arts in Sociology from the University of Waterloo. I'm going to quickly go over some areas of interest for employment and industry experience. So I'm really interested in captioning, web accessibility, and I'd love to continue learning more about that. Disability, so barriers, diversity, and equal rights. Education, so it's been great to work with Top Hat and learn more in this area. Assistive technology, and from my sociology background, I'm also interested in human interaction, qualitative research, and listening to individuals' everyday experiences, culture, discrimination, and identity. So I'm just excited to see where the accessibility field leads me with all of these interests. And thanks so much for listening. Thank you to Jennifer and to this amazing program. And please feel free to contact me in regards to any of the specific modules or information, or just with any questions. My email is kaymailolo@gmail.com. And I'm also on LinkedIn and Twitter as my name, Kayla Maiolo, which is KaylaMaiolo. And thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Kayla. What a great way to wrap it up. I'm not sure if everybody kind of caught what some of the students were saying, but that they are, unfortunately, with COVID-19, not all students were able to complete their industry experience hours. And so some of them are looking at acquiring some volunteer opportunities. So if you have something that you think might be a great volunteer opportunity, please feel free to reach out to them. There's just a few minutes left, but I did want to, Kayla did a great job of keeping within her time frame. So I just wanted to see if anybody had any comments or anything that they wanted to share. Allison, maybe you could, did you want to read out your comment out loud?
Oh, sure. Is this
partner?
Yeah, I can turn my video. Oh, hold on. There we go. I just wanted to thank you so much, Kayla, for all of your hard work and for being there when we've had questions and going back and forth with stuff with us on things as we've been really working to make changes in our textbooks. So we've really, really enjoyed having you as a partner and really appreciate all your hard work. Thank you.
Thank you. And I just wanted to add, it's been great to work with you, Allison, and everyone at Top Hat. Everyone's just been really enthusiastic about accessibility and open to learning more. And I've also been able to learn more from you too. So it's just been a great experience. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. So I'm just going to wrap up with a very quick concluding statements. So first, thank you so much for attending our 2020 Capstone Showcase. A huge congratulations to our students and our graduates. If you're interested in learning more about the Accessible Media Production Program, we're having a virtual information session this Thursday evening from 7 to 8. And you can find more information about that at mohawkcollege.ca/390. Some of our graduates will be joining us and they'll be able to answer any questions during that time. If you're interested in becoming an industry partner and working with a student in our 2020-2021 cohort, please feel free to connect with me at jennifer.yahnke, that's JAHNKE, at mohawkcollege.ca, or you can reach me via phone at 905-575-2044. This is an image of one of our industry partners, Joanne Henry, the owner of Lakeshore Media Services. She came out to do a workshop with our, so we have current students as well as some graduates and alumni of the program to do a described video workshop as an industry experience. Each year our students get the opportunity to write described video or audio described scripts for the Real Abilities Film Festival. So that's just one opportunity they have. Again, a huge congratulations to our Accessible Media Production students, Evelyn, Allison, Patty, Jeanette, Kayla, Shiona, thank you so much for your presentations today. Karen was unable to be with us to present, but a huge congratulations to her as well. They've all worked very hard in meeting this huge accomplishment. If you would like to provide any feedback on today's session or to request more information, please feel free to reach out to me. Again, my email is jennifer.yonke@mohawkcollege.ca. You can find me on the Mohawk College website at mohawkcollege.ca/390. Thank you so much for your time. It was a wonderful turnout, and I hope you have a great week. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good weekend.